Hi, I'm Rob Faulkner and I'm going to talk to you about the music technology course available at Cirencester College. It's a BTEC course, so it is the equivalent of one A-level. So if you were to sign up and do the extended certificate, which is what it's called, that's the equivalent of one A-level. It's over 2 years and it's exactly the same point system for UCAS. So if you were to get an A grade or an A star grade at A-level and you got a BTEC grade at distinction or distinction star, same points. So, and all universities will accept BTEC now. I say all, most, but even Oxford and Cambridge do now. And if you're doing music technology, they will probably favour a BTEC as opposed to A-level in music technology, because it really is more a vocational course. It really does hone in on the skills that you would need to get a job in the real world as a producer, engineer, etc. So the sort of things you'd be doing are learning all about mic placement, so what microphones you'd need to use, the different types of microphones, where you would place them to capture the best possible sound to record a drum kit, guitars, vocalists, anything, any instrument, and sound effects as well. And then you do a lot of editing to clean the tracks up, make sure there's no rumbles or pops and clips and things, make sure that they're all in time, and then learn all about mixing to get them to sound pretty much radio ready and all well balanced, etc. You also learn about sequencing, so how to create musical notes on a computer, using synthesizers or creating your own sounds using synthesizers, so you learn all about synthesis, sound creation and manipulation, so you also learn about sampling and how to create your own sounds rather than just using sample packs that are available to everybody. You can use those and manipulate them, we show you that, but also how to record your own wacky sounds and manipulate them so they sound pretty rhythmical and interesting and individual and unique. So those are the sort of things you'd be doing. We use Mac computers, we have Apple Logic Pro for a lot of the sequencing, a lot of the recordings done on Pro Tools. We've got Pro Tools HD in the studio with a 24 analog mixing console with a Mac Pro which runs the Pro Tools HD system, which is industry standard, and we have about 19 computers in a class for you to have one each to edit all your work, and it's a requirement, so you have to have one station each. Numbers, we do get a lot of applicants. It's a very popular course, but we often open 2 groups, so we can have up to 18, 19 in a group. We can't run any more than that, so we have to keep the numbers down to a point. So that's pretty much it. We have a little link afterwards to show you some of the sort of things that you'd be doing on Logic and Pro Tools. And any questions, get in touch with myself. That's rob.faulkner@cirencester.ac.uk or contact Student Journey, and good luck. This is a typical taster of the sort of things you'd be doing early in the music technology course. So what I've got here is a drum recording. So if we just go to the mixer, now you can see I've got a kick drum, snare drum, overhead, left and right mics, various tom mics, room mics, etc. And we've altered the balance and pan and put effects on, which is something you all learn about, and how to record them, which microphones to use, where to place them, etc. And once you've done that and you've recorded, then hopefully you get something that sounds a bit like this. Okay, that's pretty snappy, that's good. The thing is, some of these beats, if we make this a little bit bigger, are slightly off the grid. They do not line up with every line on the grid. Now that's not a problem if you're playing in a band or together and the drummer slightly goes off from the click or from a certain timing, providing everyone follows. But when you're doing it like this, where you've just got a backing track or a click track and the drummer's just played along to some guide track and they've got this drum track down, and it's slightly out of time every now and again. And normally you wouldn't notice, but when I hit the click track, it's a little bit more noticeable. So have a listen. Okay, and it does around there particularly. It does start to get a little bit, you know, it's not over the top, it's not ridiculous, and this is the whole point. It's a good drum track, and it needs to be a good drum track. If it's really out, then it's you might as well record the drums again, because this is not going to be time worthy. It just takes so long to do. It's not worth it. When you've got a drummer it's pretty tight and they've done it pretty close, and it's just a question of tucking a few beats in, you've captured a good take, you'll keep the feel, and that's what we're going to do. So without further ado, I'll show you how to do it. Now, rather than quantizing this and stretching these transients to the nearest grid, which is what a lot of DAWs do, we're going to use something called Beat Detective. So it will actually cut each transient into a separate clip, and then it will move it to the grid. So it moves the transient rather than stretch or compressing them, or expansion or compression, I should say. So the first thing to do is just take the kick drum and press shift and go to the last drum, in this case the room mic, and then if you go to groups and new group or command G, it will be there on your right. This is in Pro Tools, of course. Other DAWs you can do other things similar. Just make sure you know how to group your tracks on any DAW. We're using Pro Tools here. This is the industry standard for recording studios, for recording and editing audio. It is the favoured program. So once we've done that, if you call that drums and OK it, you'll get a drum group, and what that means is rather than hitting the kick drum, for example, and just highlighting the kick drum and cutting and moving that around, and if you do that, then all the kick drum sounds that are being spilt or picked up from other microphones, such as the snare, particularly the overhead and all that, it will sound different because it'll be out of time. So we've got to do it all together. Treat these drums as one instrument. So if I use my group, if I click on any one of these clips, it will highlight everything. And I'm going to go from beat 1, and what I'm going to do is just have a listen to where I'm going to cut it. By the way, to cut, if you use your selector tool, make sure you tab to transients on, and then whoops, it's not playing ball there. Let's have another go. Okay, I'm just going to go to bar 11, break that. There you go. So first 10 bars. I usually do like 4 or 8 bar sections, but let's see if we can do a full the 10 bars. So now that's selected. If I just make that a bit smaller, there we go. So what I'm going to do now is open up Beat Detective, so Command 8, and I'm going to capture the selection, which is from bar 1 to the beginning of bar 11. So if I do capture, then it should be bar 1, bar 11, and then what I'm going to do is analyze. So analysing this now, if I make it more sensitive, it will take all the little transients, but I don't want to do that. I just want to make it so it's sort of the main ones. Yeah, so I say the main ones, the main kind of kick and snares, the odd fill here and there is okay, but generally if I start cutting these too much, it will move all the slight nuances around, and I don't want that. I just want it to be pretty solid, so I'm just going to leave it about sort of 20% will do. Okay, and then what it will do now is if I go to clip separation, it will separate it, and then it will turn this into all different clips. So they're all separate clips now. So now if I do clip conform, it will shift all these things slightly. Hopefully what you don't want it is to find that it moves and goes all over the place, because that means you've got a real terrible drum track, or it's just done it too much, or you've set this wrong. This is at 16th, so it's just moving it to the nearest 16th of the grid. Okay, so I've done that. Now once I've done that, because there's gaps, I don't want gaps, otherwise that's going to sound terrible. So edit smoothing, fill and crossfade, add a 5 millisecond crossfade, and then smooth, and then hopefully now that should sound pretty neat. There we go, and then that's ready to do the next bit. So once you've done that and you're happy with it, is to consolidate. So while they're all highlighted, every single clip, I can either go edit, consolidate, or shortcut Alt, Shift and 3. And what that does then, it consolidates every single clip into all the separate clips and puts them into one. Okay, or each one into its own separate clip, or more to the point, the kick drum, the snare, the overhead, into one continuous clip. And there we go. And then once that's there, and that's it. And now we're ready to go on and do the rest of it. And it should only take, well, 20-30 minutes, but worth it because you get a really good tight sounding kit. That's it.
Hi, I'm Charlie. I'm the music technician at Cirencester College, so I manage the recording studio and I also teach electronic music production. What I'm going to be doing today is just a short introduction to sequencing using Logic Pro. We're starting with a blank software instrument track. We're going to open Logic's inbuilt sampler instrument by clicking this instrument panel, and this is known as a track or a channel. So I'm going to click on sampler. And if we play a few notes on our MIDI keyboard, you hear a sine wave sound, which is the default patch. We can change this by navigating to the factory default at the top and picking any of the available options like acoustic pianos, drums and percussions, synthesizers and strings. Let's hear a couple of these. Next, we'll load up a drum sound and begin sequencing a basic drum beat. For this demonstration, I'm going to choose an electronic drum kit, but you can use whatever you like the sound of. So let's go for electronic drum kits. Let's just use this electronic pop kit. To record, I need to click this red record button in the transport bar at the top of the screen. This will give me a 1 bar click count in before I can begin playing the parts. When I'm finished, I can press stop or just spacebar on my computer keyboard. I can navigate back to the start of the project and hit play or spacebar to hear what I just recorded. If I wasn't happy with the result, I can select this region and press backspace to delete it and try again. You'll probably notice there are some timing errors in what we've just recorded. We're only human, so it's only natural, and we're unlikely to ever get a perfectly in time result from playing in such a part in real time. It's almost impossible to play something that is consistently perfectly in time, but fortunately, the software allows us to fix this. So to correct the timing error, we can double click on the region and we can quantize the part by selecting all the notes and pressing this Q quantize button, or simply hitting Q on our computer keyboards. So I'm going to select all of my notes by pressing Command A, or I could draw a big circle around them, and then I can press Q here, or Q on my keyboard. So quantize means to snap the recorded notes so that they fit perfectly on a grid to more closely match the tempo and beat of the composition we're making, with the option of quantizing the notes to any division of the beat. So in this case, quantizing to a 16th note will move the selected events so that they start on the nearest 16th. If stuff's still a little bit out of time, you can manually click and drag it, just so it sits where you want it. When we're sequencing a drum part, it is often best to split the instrument into its constituent parts on their own individual tracks. So we would have kick drum on one track, snare drum on another, and say any cymbals on a third. The reason for doing so is to better mimic the process of recording a real drum kit, where we might use multiple microphones. And it also allows us to process each part of the drum kit separately with effects, EQs, compressions, A kick drum would need very different processing to a snare drum or a crash. For example, we might want to boost the low end of our kick, but we certainly don't want that copied to the snare drum, which would need vastly different frequencies to be boosted or cut. So I'm going to record my kick drum part first. I'm going to name this track Kick, and then I can press record or just R again on my computer, but this time I'm only going to be playing the lowest note on my MIDI keyboard, which corresponds to the sound of the kick drum. I can then quantize this part in time with the project in the same way we did earlier. Double click, select all of these notes, and then Q snaps it in time with our grids. It's a lot easier to play things in one at a time too. So I'm going to do my snare drum next. To create a new track with duplicate settings, I can use this duplicate button at the top, just above the instruments, or I can just press Command and D on my computer keyboard as a shortcut. That will give me another sampler track with exactly the same drum kit sound as my first. I'm going to call this one snare, and I'm going to repeat the process of recording and quantizing, this time just pressing my snare key. So we'll hit record. And again, select all the notes, quantize. If there's something that, again, you want to add an extra note in, say, maybe I want to have a bit more of a fill here, I can use my pencil tool just to click a note and draw another one in. I can then repeat this and add some hi-hats, crash cymbals, anything else that I want to do. So Command D, let's do some hats. And again, double click, quantize. You get into the habit of doing this. So I now have a complete drum part that has been quantized in time with the project. I can listen to it, I can loop it, or I can copy and paste throughout my song, maybe making a few adjustments to the layers. So maybe I don't have the hats in at the start, and I just kind of bring them in later on. You can make a longer arrangement this way, just out of each of these regions. We can now move on to the other sounds such as bass keyboards or synthesizers, recording these in the same way as we did the drums. To do this, I'm going to create a new software instrument track for each by pressing this plus button next to our duplicate, or by using the keyboard shortcut Alt, Command and N. I'm going to load up a sampler again. But this time, instead of using drums, let's have a electric piano. And with this, I can just play some chords in. So I'm going to start from the beginning of my project, press record, and play the part in. We can then repeat this, add some bass in, maybe add another part, whatever instruments you want to do. And there we have it, a start to a sequence track of drums, bass and keyboard chords, all ready to be expanded out into a longer piece of music. This lesson will be a simple introduction to the DAW production unit of the course, in which you create your own sequence compositions before moving on to mixing, when we look at using the vast array of audio effect plugins available to us, such as EQs and compressions, as well as all the weird and wonderful distortions, reverbs and delays, to make your work sound as good as the commercial tracks that you listen to.